I'm not going to say that I'm honored to have the following guest with me because it goes without saying. She is my wife. She is the founder, the director, the executive director of Lynn's Warriors. She has the best YouTube channel, Lynn's Warriors, on YouTube. And if you know anything about me and her, you know who she is. So let's dispense with the obvious and welcome, my darling.
Thank you very much, my husband. Thank you for having me, for hosting today. We have a lot of subjects we should jump right into
Good.
and let the public know what's really going on.
Okay, start. What's on your mind?
Well, I do want to let's start with this Hurricane Milton. I really think it's very important that all of us use any platforms we have to get information out into the public, just coming off of and still being affected from the state, Florida. This is going to be its second storm in less than 2 weeks. Georgia, Tennessee, going into the Carolinas. So, everybody, I just was sent by law enforcement and I posted it on Lynn's Warriors Twitter. If you have an iPhone, what you can do in the face of this impending disaster to download this iOS 18. And again, Lynn's Warriors Twitter, that will help you. You'll be on a satellite because communication is key. I'll leave it at that. Also, everybody do anything in their power to contribute, whether it's a pair of socks, $1, or just manpower into any of these affected communities, right? We still don't know about this Milton. It's bearing down on us. And one last thing, something we stress so much at the Warriors, always, every family, every home should have a disaster plan prepared. You should have bullet points, communication, enough food in the house for 2 weeks, extra water in the house, checking on your neighbors, have all your medical supplies, any kind of prescriptions, things of importance in one bag in case you have to leave quickly. We can't stress it enough. And I think we're being shown with all these different floods and we have fires and things like that, earthquakes, we need to be prepared.
And I've been talking about for the longest time preparedness in terms of emergency food, water, energy, and the like. Some might say ammunition. That's for a different show, a different subject matter, but still food, water, and energy. And I have been a proponent of a sponsor called preparewithlionel.com. It's my Patriot Supply. And for the longest time, I know you've seen this as well. People would think, "Oh, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. What are you, some tinfoil hat prepper?" Now look how smart it is and how wise it is. So that's also great. And also, let me ask you, how do you handle the mental health aspects of little children when they're hearing, as the mayor of Tampa said in one particular interview, you're going to die. If you stay in this particular area, you're going to die. What do kids think about this?
First of all, Mayor Castor, I want to say that I think people should heed her words, but I think saying you are going to die when we have a lot of kids watching things online, on TVs, parents in a panic, family members in a panic. I don't know if I'd use that word die thinking of children and also scaring adults, but I understand she's trying to scare people to evacuate. I think the only thing you can do is keep your loved ones very close, right? And to keep reassuring them, you're okay, you're with mom, you're with dad, you're with grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncles, keep it. We love you. Hug the kids, reassure. And frankly, we are the adults. And I really think don't have the TV on in front of the kids, right? Use your ear pods. Listen, obviously be updated on everything, but distract them. Don't allow them. Give them some artwork to do. Do you have your plan to evacuate? Where are you going? I just posted something. A friend of a friend is offering his property in Alabama. If you can get there, you can park all your stuff there for free. He's got 3.5 acres. People, the American public is wonderful. They are turning out. Unlike our government right now, we'll get into that. But I just want to say the only thing you can do in the face of any of these disasters, keep your children close. Don't let them go in bedrooms and isolate and all that stuff. Get them offline if possible. Hug them, kiss them. We're all together. We're going to be okay. We're all together. We're going to be okay. That is really all you can do. And again, have your emergency plan in place.
Excellent. Now, what else shall we talk about? I don't want to, I know where we're going, but I want you to be able to list ad seriatim those areas you think are critical.
I really do want to focus on this dirty Diddy, aka Sean Combs, aka PD, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy Love is his last incarnation. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people are jumping on this, and we know what it's about, clicks, like web traffic. But I want to stress at the Warriors that we do work with victims and survivors of sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, sex abuse. The focus on this case and why it is so important, the way I see it, we see it at the Warriors, is that justice must play out and be served, not only for these victims of Sean Combs. I really have a hard time calling him any other names, but I will call him Dirty Diddy. That's what I like to call him. We want them to have their justice, but also this case is so important because for all victims and survivors of sex trafficking, they are usually blamed. And we see this playing out with Dirty Diddy's mama. She put out a statement blaming feds and blaming victims coming forward, potential victims, just as they're not victims, it's for a money grab, right? We know, we're all adults here. We know some of that does go on, a lot of that goes on. But we also know where there's smoke, there's fire. And this case is tremendous. We have so many facts already. They're deciphering, whether it's Homeland Security. We're not exactly sure. We know they took videotapes and equipment. What else did they take from there? So I think the thing to put the focus on is we have to see. There have been other recent cases, I don't have to say the names, that in my opinion did not play out. You have one person in prison, one person not around, and nothing lately. We never got to the bottom of that. Who else was complicit? Who else was accountable? This is the case that has so many different, as I like to say, spokes on that wheel that makes it go round. We cannot allow this one to slip through our fingers. And let me just finish with yesterday. And you said to me, because I asked you, the lawyer, Tony Busby in Houston, Texas, who began all of this with a 888 number or 999 number. He has some number. If you're a victim, call us. And he started out with 3,285 calls. He took on so far 120 cases, okay, including minors at the time. But he also last week reported that he got 12,000 more phone calls on the hotline. But what I want to say to you is he also said yesterday that, as a matter of fact, he went on TMZ. And I don't know why lawyers, well, we'll get into that, do that. Okay, we'll leave that for a second. But also he said that he was reaching out with demand letters or demands, and you can clear this up for us. And already people were paying people off to make their names disappear. Now, can we talk about that a little bit? Because if that's going to happen and does happen in a lot of sexual cases, we will get nowhere really with this case. Sure, we might get one or two low-hanging fruit, arrested, in my opinion. But will we really get to Sean Combs? We'll get him on something. But
Yeah.
What about these demand letters and then people pay? Explain
Demand
all
letter.
that.
Very simple. We have an automobile accident. You rear end me. I send you a demand letter. Very simple. Happens all the time. Turn this over to your insurance company. Pay me the money. Fix this. That's it. It's a demand letter. It's simple. Slip and fall. I fell. Okay. So that's what a demand letter is. Demand that happens. This is in civil. So I could theoretically call somebody, write somebody, and say, "Dear putative alleged perpetrator predator X, you have until 30 days to pay us $1 million, or else we're going to go to trial, or I'm going to sue you." And the person who has the right, who can file the cause of action, the victim, can sign, can waive any and all future claims, give you a release. This hereby absolves me and you from any further civil action. Now, does this prevent the federal government or the state government to prosecute, let's say, whoever this person is? Assume it's Diddy, just for the sake of argument. No. It is that demand letter is only for civil cases. Let's assume that you are a part, this fender bender that I talk about, this hypothetical, you are also charged at the same time with reckless driving. That case goes on. What you and I settle in terms of property damage, that's a different story. So he can settle all he wants. Normally, you want to work in concert with the federal government or the state government to see what they do. They will do the investigation basically better than you could ever do. Why would you want to settle a case right now? What if there's more information, more facts, more involvement? For example, let's say instead of,
That's what I want to ask you. Why
Right.
would they, or potentially couldn't they go then to the feds and say, okay, let me give you this information and can we work out a deal? So why would they pay somebody, as an example, $1 million now if this is all going on? I
Well,
know it's two separate things.
that's exactly the right exactly. I would say I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to say anything because let's assume during the course of this settlement that perpetrator X divulges information, admits it, says what happened. If the feds then subpoena, let's say, the victim to turn this information over, there's no privilege. You can't say, whoa, no, I settled with them. Great, that's civilly. I don't know what the hurry is. You also can figure out, believe it or not, in terms of an omnibus, huge, you may end up with 50. This guy, if you wait your time, you may find out that not only, this is the civil lawyer now, not only is the individual uh, 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 responsible for this act, but maybe the people who had the party, the record company who provided the alcohol, the people who brought the drugs. You may end up with 30 people that are potential defendants. So, well, there's something I've got to tell you that's tawdry to the public eye. A lot of times you'll see it, believe it or not, in terms of mass tort claims, airline disasters, chemical spills. Hi, have you been injured? Call me. I Have you seen this every now and then on Facebook? Did you ever have Father
Yeah.
O'Shaughnessy at St. Aloysius at your? Did you ever go to this urologist? Call us. You know, it's. I understand a First Amendment right that people have, obviously, to uh, promote litigation, which is fine, which is their right. But it does seem like that 800 call me. Have you been injured? But that's a different story. Here's the question I want to ask you, both in your sensibilities as working with predators, but also as a potential juror. Let's take children out of the equation, because that changes all the rules. Children cannot consent. But let me retract what I just said. Let's stay on this one subject. What about parents? What about parents? Do you think if my child, our child, every night goes to the local bar without knowing it, we never stopped them, goes in and gets hurt, gets beaten up, or whatever it is, or it's served improperly, but we as parents know our kids are going to this bar, you don't think that's abuse, neglect, or abandonment? You damn right it is. That we could be looking at having the children taken away through, again, some type of dependency action, some aiding to the delinquency or the dependency of a minor, abuse, neglect, or abandonment, all of those, termination of parental rights. I don't know where these parents are, but that's over here. Let me ask you this question. Victim X, did Mr. Combs or his associates throw you in the back of a van, put a gun to your head, sedate you, kidnap you? You responded to an invitation, correct? In fact, we've got you showing up to these freak offs 10 to 15 times. Now, at what point were you victimized? The first time, the second time, the third time, etc., etc.? That's my question, because that's the first thing. I'm always thinking about, what kind of a defense does Sean Combs have, from what little I know of the facts.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, here's what I think. I think you're correct, and that is the thinking of the justice system and of attorneys. But I also think several people, again, not knowing each other, all have a similar story. So, right, there's smoke, there's fire, but we have to prove it. A lot of them did go. We're not hearing enough about this. A lot of them did go to emergency rooms.
Okay.
They were victims of whatever. They're talking about this xylazine was injected. I'll just leave it at that. Or a family
Mhm.
program into baby oils. They were drugged. A lot of them said they woke up the next day
Mhm.
with people raping them, or they woke
Mhm.
up the next day without their clothes on. So if they went to an emergency room and there was a record and there was a date and they tie it, hopefully they said maybe I was at this party or something, or we could There has to be, I understand proof. I understand proof. But other than that, how about when they raided his home? We never got a complete list, as far as I know. What were in these two homes in Florida and in California? We heard about video equipment and tapes,
Okay,
right?
wait. Before
But
we
wait,
get to that, before we get to that,
well, I'm trying to prove how we can hold him responsible, in my
well,
opinion.
okay, but no, but the first thing is, I'm saying in terms of you're a juror, and I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to
Well, I
set
understand.
I'm going to set the scene, and I'm going to say there were some terrible things, and all you had to do was not go. Now, somebody who has anything put into a drink, anybody who you obviously cannot consent to anything if you're either a
Well,
child or
that's what I'm trying to
right.
talk about.
Remember, this is the same thing that happens to people who go to doctors, who dentists, who were sedated and have terrible things happen to them. But not everybody was sedated, and not everybody was sent to hospitals, and there are other people who came back. And if you sedate me once, I mean, theoretically, I know this is far fetched. I can consent to sedation, even though it's a controlled substance and that sort of thing. But aside from that, first, I want the government to tell me how many total victims are there, number one. What were the dates of this? When did this happen? This is a bill of particulars, which normally you will get. It specifically lists when are we talking from here to here? Who was, what are the charges? You may ultimately, remember, this initial indictment can either be superseded, it can be amended with, let's say, more severe charges, or they can drop certain counts. We don't know. All I know is that there are people, there's going to be so much information and so much deleterious information, if you will, that people who might have necessarily been that swayed one way or the other about Diddy are going to be so overwhelmed by the amount of predation. It's going to be, you're just going to, what if there's 100 people? What if there's 100 people? And if you ask, why didn't you go to the police? Because I was afraid. They told me, they threatened me. Oh my God, this is going to be a police. This cannot go to trial. Just imagine this trial starting. And let's assume you've got 100 witnesses. Let's say 10% are, that means there's 90 who are rock solid. And also, right now, here's my question. As we speak, Diddy is in the Brooklyn Correctional, not the Manhattan where that one particular famous fellow was met his maker, but he's in Brooklyn. He's not getting out. He's asking, what do I do to get out? Can I turn on somebody? Can I provide information? This guy he's not a tough guy. He's never been in lockdown all day long with cameras, a stainless steel toilet from. He is right now looking to see, what can I do to make a deal? Is there somebody bigger than me that you want? He's going to have to be. That's what I want to know about. And how do you think Hollywood is freaking out right now if this guy is yammering? And believe it or not, one more thing, not to belabor the point, but his being in prison, or being in, remember, he's not convicted, but his being in jail may be protecting him. It may actually be keeping him alive versus he's out and about on his own.
Well, I know this Thursday there's another, I believe, bail hearing or hearing to see for the third time if he can get out. They're also requesting that he be moved to the Essex County Jail in New Jersey, which is Newark, New Jersey. I really, something I never say. There's so many legs to this story, case, predation. I don't know with the sex trafficking. If somebody's 18 and older and they went there of their own free will, how do you prove that, right? Unless you have a solid case, things in writing, I guess. People on private airplanes being flown in state to state. But again, I want to know, this is where I was going before. When they raided those two homes, what exactly did they find? this is what I want to know to make a case stick. So we heard of videos and we heard of video equipment. And now I feel like I understand there's the case coming up and all that. But we're also hearing, we'd like to know more about what's on those videos, right? What else did they find? If these freak off, well, I want to just say something. If these freak off parties, both homes have had to be full of, the IV equipment and drugs and weapons. I think they said they did take weapons. I'm trying to have a case.
Let's break down what you said. First thing you said about was most of the time, sex trafficking involves people over the age of 18. Fraud, force, coercion, duress, the idea that I get you to do something you don't want to do. That's the notion of trafficking. That's it. We see people here in Manhattan all the time. We don't know, but it looks like they're into labor trafficking. There are people that we've heard of who they come to New York and they think they're going to be in the financial business, and their passports are taken. Next, they're cleaning toilets and they're domestics. They're over the age of 18, but they're being held against their will. They're being forced by force, fraud, coercion. So that's how that is. Trafficking is a terrible word. Traffic implies I'm moving you. Drug trafficking is just the amount. Trafficking means dealing. That's all it means. To traffic in something means to deal with it. That's all it means. That's that. You're asking, what about the inventory? When the federal government goes in to conduct a search, there's an inventory. What did you take? They take pictures of it. Just think of President Trump. The boxes at Mar-a-Lago. They showed you a lot of those were his own personal. They weren't seized. A lot of those boxes had nothing. I don't want to get into that, but they had nothing putatively illegal in that the whole time. It was his thing. So, but you're asking for, what about an inventory? What about the idea of where does this, who knows? That's number one. Will there be evidence of indeed IVs? Well, that will corroborate others. It depends on the testimony of other people. It depends. And here's the thing too. Why did they take this and not arrest Diddy then? Why? Now, why didn't they just arrest him then? Why did they do this? The same thing with Mayor Eric Adams. They took his phones and everything, and then nothing. Next thing you know, all his other people he was indicted later on. I don't understand this. Normally, when they go in, they've got the case. They want to make sure they seize the evidence so you can't destroy it, or they want to copy it, or whatever it is. That notwithstanding, what do you think Hollywood is thinking? This is your area. Mm-hmm. Explain to people how big, and I go back to my adherence to the words of the prophet Cat Williams and others, and how that and other people have been trying to open the doors, so to speak, to this. But what do you think people, and we don't know, nobody's been charged yet, but this group of people, what do you call it, hip hop, rap, or black entertainment, or whatever, it's huge, billions. What do you think they're thinking?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start with this one. I do know from working with survivors, victims in sex trafficking, they have now, before this case ever even happened, they reported to us coming from the Bronx and Brooklyn here in New York. It was part of up the ranks of wanting to work in hip hop, in the music business as teenage girls, right? This was just part and parcel to being accepted into this. They were hired as, stylists, makeup artists, will hang around the studio with you. But they all pointed out, again, way before this Dirty Diddy case, this was a sex trafficking operation that they were passed around. They were forced into.
Now, let's make sure we say this. First of all, we don't know when you say this is we don't know who manages this.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying this is what has been reported to us.
Well, let me also say something. It's very important that we clarify something. Not only that, but in the world of Hollywood, Harvey Weinstein, the days of Fatty Arbuckle, Clara Bow, Louis B. Mayer, the casting couch. It's been, not to mention, just plain old look at, this has nothing to do with it, the number of lawsuits that came out of the Fox News channel that were settled. So the idea of people, women in particular, being preyed upon and forced or or cajoled into doing things to either maintain their position or to move up the ranks. This is pervasive, many people would say, in every rank. Cheerleaders, professional wrestling, politics. Remember during the Barney Frank days, and there were the pages. I mean, this is Ted Kennedy. So first thing is, none of this is new. And whenever these sick people see somebody out there trying to get ahead, trying to move, let's say, out. Who was it one time we heard somebody say, a young man, or I think, who said he wanted to move out of the ghetto or the hood. His dream was to buy his mother a home, and they dangle. When I say they, the industry. And there have been names, Clive Davis, who has absolutely denied any involvement, but just go down the list, go down the biggest names ever. But whenever there are people who seek some type of fame, they're preyed upon. This has been going on forever. And you've heard about this since day one.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is another program. If anything, we teach at the Warriors, when it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Our society, our culture is so infatuated and so in love with this idea of fame and fortune. And by virtue of the computer, the internet, where everybody's got a screen now, everybody can become a star. Everybody can be on OnlyFans.
Yes.
Everybody can be, their own porn star. Everybody can whatever they want now, right? It's a fantasy world. Again, when it's too good to be true, it is. So, for instance, nobody, if you're invited to these freak off parties or any parties in Hollywood, I'm sorry, nothing comes for free. There are other motives coming from that. And always it's on vulnerable populations, right? It is on maybe that mom who wants her daughter to be a singing sensation. And maybe the daughter does have a beautiful voice. But what I want to say is,
Stage door, what do they call them? Stage door Annies or stage door. This is like
stage mothers and stuff like that.
right.
But if you are going to pursue, first of all, I'm here to say to you, you must think long and hard. Let this be a lesson. This Dirty Diddy case and other cases recently, right? And things we see on the internet, that your child wait until they're 18. If you are pursuing with a child, you must be with them every step of the way. You never let go. You go in every room. Your child's a minor. You have every right when somebody says, I'll take your child for a weekend. We'll go to this boot camp for acting. I'll make them a record star, send them to me. We know as an example. And I want to keep saying this because I want people to learn from what's going on. Justin Bieber, we have no proof of anything. Justin Bieber is only 30 years old. I don't like people jumping on saying, oh, what was his involvement? Why hasn't he put out a statement? We have some videos of him. We know that he went to live with him in Scarsdale, New York, right? Diddy was in a mansion there. We have to go on this. I've always been a proponent, as you know, of parental autonomy. We can't tell you what to do with your kids. I am here to say you cannot do things like that. Why are parents or family members dropping a child off? Justin Bieber was the biggest thing. He was selling out 5 nights in a row, Madison Square Garden. He's obviously suffered trauma. He's admitted in videos in the past his trauma. He's not right. He's only 30 years old. We've seen this. We've also seen this. Look at Britney Spears. Something happened to her.
What about the people, women? What about the people who brought their kids to Michael Jackson, Macaulay Culkin? I don't know what it is.
Okay, that goes because they want to rub shoulders with celebrities. They want to be near that money, that influence. You have to realize that is a fairy tale and no good is going to come out of that.
I don't want to mention the name, okay? But you and I know that was from your years of theatrical work. You knew the case of this one young actress, very, very, very popular. Not that you were involved in a particular venture. She could not go anywhere without either the mother present or an armed guard, almost like a retired cop. Remember that?
Yes, of course I remember that.
It was the best thing. I mean, This mother should be in the record book. Laser. Not one moment was this child ever, and very, very, very successful. That can be done. I have never understood if somebody said to me, called us up and said, "Hey, honey, you're not going to believe this. Michael Jackson wants our son to spend the no." First of all, anybody, relatives. Why does Uncle Dave want? I don't understand that one. That's number one. I think that what happens is there's another part of this. When you were 15, 16, and let me also say something because I'm jumping ahead of myself. We keep talking about girls. We keep talking about girls. We keep talking about girls. But something tells me that the number of boys who have been involved in this and the stigma that is associated with boys being the victim makes them less likely to be as upfront. Boys don't like to say that they were abused by men, and I'm sorry, but when you're a child, abduction is abduction, victimization is victimization. That being said, the focus here is always on girls, but the number of boys, I think, would astound people. And that also is. This is one of the reasons why I know, as a matter of fact, having dealt somewhat with a lot of these mass tort cases in Catholic schools from the 50s, there were a lot of men who turned down involvement in civil litigation because they said, "I don't want my kids to find out about this. I don't want, it's like a double victimization." And that's wrong as well. So many layers. And the thing is, the predators use this against you. And not only that, the predators use it against you, but the people involving the extortion and the blackmailers, they use the fact that you've got imagine some huge hip hop or Hollywood star you've got, because of our age of photos and whatever, doing something with a boy. Double the damage, double the blackmail. Very complicated.
Yeah. Also, there was a great report put out by law enforcement in 2023 that nobody picked up on. I'm going to be really pushing it out. The number one, the largest growing demo for sex trafficking in the United States, boys, boys, boys. All of these cases, even with Dirty Diddy, I believe, this is my opinion, there were boys and young men involved, right? We know for a fact in these lawsuits and things, male prostitutes, right, were hired. And I believe this was a cover up for really like a male sex trafficking ring. But that's me. I don't have proof. I'm just saying that. We also know,
Well,
look at the.
let me say something. Let me say this for a minute. I think what we're trying to say is that it would not surprise us in the
Yes.
least.
Okay.
Because what we need to always remember, and this is incredible, is that we sit back and we always talk about people who will read what's going on. Because remember, as interesting as the TMZs and do whatever it is, their job, understand this, is to report the truth, but to spice it and kind of turbocharge the interest. So what we do is we're sitting back, and I want everybody watching this to do this. You get the information, you collect it, you put it into you kind of a sieve, you kind of shake out the stuff that doesn't make any sense. You see what's left over, and then it all remains to be seen. Unless you're in a courtroom, unless you get to hear the victims, unless you hear the facts of the case, unless you hear a police report, read a police report, know what's happening, we don't know anything. Nothing would surprise us. When I saw pictures of Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin and kids and the chimp, and even then I'm thinking, how is this happening? And then lo and behold, later on, when accusations were made against Michael Jackson, people then all of a sudden were shocked. Say, where were you before? How many times must we as citizens see this before we realize, wait a minute, there's open season on children. What's the number of unaccompanied minors in this that we think that Homeland Security and others are thinking that are coming over across our borders? Unaccompanied minors that you will never see again?
Over 500,000.
How many kids are missing every single day?
2,300, and that number is
Right.
from five years ago. So I don't, we don't
There
have
is
studies even that support.
so we don't think for 1 minute that for some reason that the entertainment division or sports or politics or whatever is somehow going to be immune from the horrors that are exacted upon children. We also have to say this is the rudimentary. Everybody, of course, is presumed innocent. Everybody, all these charges could be dropped tomorrow for reasons, or nobody's going to consult with us. So we understand the presumption of innocence and we understand all of that. However,
Mhm.
I have never, ever in my lifetime seen anything where there is no smoke to any fire. There is something there that's going on. And when you have people coming forward out of the woodwork, and remember, there are people who are going to be coming forward, some of them who had nothing to do with this, who were going to see this as a payday, who are going to hope this is, when you get one of those class action lawsuits, like, did you ever go to a Radio Shack? Did you ever the WhatsApp here? You may qualify, and you end up getting $1 or something. Somebody may view this as a payday. That notwithstanding, this has the entire entertainment world freaking out,
Mhm.
and for good reason.
And we also hear a couple of different things. We also hear that the greatest business going on in the last 2 weeks are damage control firms being hired in Hollywood and New York, PR firms spinning things. If you really read between the lines, different sites or whatever you're looking at, you will see different celebrities. I'm not saying they're attached to this
Mhm.
in any way, shape, or form, other than, all of a sudden they mysteriously deleted their Twitter account, or
Mhm.
they put out, oh, I left the Diddy parties early. Everybody knows to leave them early. Just putting out these little tidbits,
Mhm.
almost getting in front of the story. I'm not
Right.
saying anybody's guilty, but that's always a tactic with damage control. You get in front of the story. I want to say that. Getting
That's
back
also
to
that is what is called in the intel biz a limited hangout. That's when you admit to a little bit before the big stuff comes, when you can say, oh, no, 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 I already admitted to that. And you say, no, you admitted to a portion of it. So that's been going on since Alan Dulles. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I also want to point out, going back to boys and men as these victims of all this sexual abuse, what we're not talking about, agreed, we need to talk about it more. No embarrassment. We've got the sextortion. We've had 3 FBI warnings in
Mm.
1 year. 14 to 17-year-old teen boys are being victimized like you can't believe. There is not enough discussion about that. It is coming out of Nigeria, all the servers we know. And instead of the kids coming to us, certain children are really harming themselves. But I want to point out, we now have in the public's eye, because remember, people are visual. I'm glad we're dissecting this case of Diddy a bit. We're going a little deeper. We're analyzing. We're talking about it, things other people may not be talking about in media. But the Menendez brothers,
Oh,
we look at boys, we look at sexual abuse at home. Now let me just finish this one. Very differently from 1989, when this case was tried. In our opinion, they do deserve, we hear it's going to be November, a new trial. Let's see what happens with that. But I also want to say, people have to understand something. Most of the sex trafficking of children and sexual abuse comes from within the home, somebody that knows your family, somebody's right, a neighbor of yours. People have to understand, for instance, New York State, where we live, the last figure thrown out was 64% of sex trafficking victims, minors we're talking about now. It is familial trafficking. It's their own
wow.
families doing this. So if you take that and correlate it, to people selling their kids for fame and fortune, people sell their kids. And I think as a society, we don't talk about that enough. People will say it's been going on for,
Let me,
centuries and
right.
decades. It's a family, it's a culture thing. We are selling our own children.
Let me leave with this. And this is something that you've heard and I've heard people say to you. People love to tell you, I would love to watch you or listen to you, but the subject matter is just kind of icky. It's just too hard for me to understand. I just don't want, can we I remember one time there was an event an organization where somebody told you, I think one of the heads told you, what was it? Kind of tone it down or something like tone it down or
Don't scare
yeah,
people.
don't scare people. Right. If this is not
Scary.
changed, I mean, that's like trying to prevent people, tell people to prevent cancer, but say, don't say cancer. This is the part that drives me crazy. This is happening to now. If kids knew the truth, we could immunize them. We could vaccinate them against this. If little kids said, wait a minute, this is exactly what my parents are saying. I recognize this. They talk to me about this. And one more thing, when you have 15-year-old, let's say girls, who get together and they're rowdy and they're tough and they're getting out and they're being treated like an adult and they're being given money and jewels and this. Peer pressure is one thing. They don't want to sit there and say, hey, do you think maybe this might be perhaps that we might be over our head? They don't want to do this because it's that horrible thing about being a stupid teenager, and everybody knows what this is like. That's the problem too. They work in packs. They show up together. They're not going to sit there and say, I don't like the looks of this. You're going to walk in, and if there's a party with people that you know from the hip hop or entertainment or Hollywood, you're going to turn around and leave? I don't think so. You're 50. And they prey upon that. So understand, it's nobody's fault. We're not victim blaming. We're victim explaining, which is a big difference.
Well, again, if it's too good to be true, I know it's hard for young people to understand this. Nobody's making you a star. You don't have to do anything sexual to become a star. That is the way it's
Absolutely.
supposed to be. But I also want to say a couple of takeaways. We do have the alpha generation, a lot of studies coming out. They are getting away. The pendulum is slightly swinging back. Those are kids born in 2010, so they're still very young, but
Wow.
they're understanding delay is the way. Off the devices more. We're having crocheting and knitting, believe it or not. We're having book clubs, and those kids are up to 14 years old. So we're talking like 8,
Good.
10, 12. They're understanding it. It's that Gen Z that's kind of caught. They've been born into this whole internet thing, the 30s and under. We have to help them tremendously. But I also want to say, if you need any kind of help, that if you suspect somebody is a victim, you yourself are a victim, you know somebody, you're not going to get in trouble. We always suggest having a record, making a trail, 911. Please, that is your first step. And also anything else, I just want to throw this out there. It's come to me recently, and it's come to me through victims of sex trafficking. They said that the best thing to keep a record is also going to a hospital emergency room because they're open 24/7. 365 and get into that environment, right? Get away because, for instance, we put out hotline numbers and things like that. We hear different reports. It takes
Yep.
too long. Remember, if you're the victim of something, a crime or something, and you have seconds at hotlines and you're on hold and press 1 and press 5 and you don't know what you're doing, you've got to make your escape within seconds. We had a case over the weekend that I was conversing with somebody about this. So we have to also always, all of us, have a plan in place because I agree. And I want to just throw one other thing you pointed out and you said, don't scare. You have to be scared about this. You have to start when your child is almost a baby, age appropriate. You don't have to give away too much information. You must have honest and open communication. Again, age appropriate. There are plenty of tools to help you. You can always go to lynswarriors.org. You can always write to me and ask questions. But I want everybody to understand it is up to us because the government is, despite all the bipartisan legislation and the talk, not moving fast enough. And I want to throw one more thing out there. Yes, for those of you who write to me and say, I don't smile enough, I look mean, I look angry. Well, you know what? I am mean. I am angry. I am upset that our children this is allowed to go on in the United States of America. And no matter what you think about the border, that the current administration admits to losing 500,000 plus kids, could be a million. We don't really know the number
Yeah.
because you know what? Nobody keeps records, right? And this is disgusting, this predation on children. Our children, those children, minors, right? And we have to stop it. We have to stop this bleed. It has to start in our own homes and our communities and then spread out from there. But you know what? I don't want to smile when I'm talking about this. This is ugly and dark, and everybody needs to be aware of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, my darling, Lynn's Warriors, I have all the information here. You're on YouTube at Lynn's Warriors, on X or Twitter at Lynn's and then _ Warriors. We're going to do this again. I want to talk about the Menendez brothers next. That is a fascinating case. I predict they're going to be released. Credit for time served. We'll talk about that one. And it's just, it is so important and so critical that if we can just get just one person to save one person. I don't know what you're moving things around here. You're moving your camera.
Whoops. Sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry about it. There you go.
I hit something. I'm sorry.
Very subtle. Very subtle. Anyway, we're going to be doing this again. I love you. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Lynn's Warriors at Lynn's Warriors on YouTube. And we will talk again, my darling. Thank you so much.
Love you, husband.